Okay, we're back. Alright, this might be a bit better. Hopefully it stops logging me out now. That'd be nice. Right, let's run this again. What do you mean resize my OBS window? Alright, let's run this again. Oh, that window. Oh, okay. I see it now. Transform, center. Transform. Fit. There we go. Is that fixed? That should be better now. Alright, should you update symptom? Meridian will work on 10.2.1 on i7. It's just broken at the moment. Just be patient. We should be able to fix it in a few weeks. End of the month, maybe. I don't want to set any promises though. I don't want anyone to get disappointed. Okay, let's try this again. Jeez, this really doesn't want to run today. Okay, set the fan, hope that's not too loud. Should tweaks work the same way as Goblin in terms of compatibility as they are on 10.3? Absolutely, exactly the same. In theory, most tweaks that work on older versions of iOS 10 will work fine anyway, because as far as I know, there aren't many changes to the system. One of the big changes was APFS, but that doesn't really affect things on a higher... In fact, that doesn't really affect things at all. So you don't see that even at low level exploitation and engineering that I've been doing. It barely even makes a difference. So where I was going with that is that there aren't many changes in terms of tweaks. But obviously anything that works on Vortex will work fine. Yay, it's alive. Okay. Alright, so you can see in the logs now, there's all the logs from jailbreaking, and then there's also the Amphi patch in here that's doing things. So you can see it patched in a few binaries, patched in jailbreak D, and it patched in the injector binary that I have. And also, what do we do? Yeah, so you can see, for example, patched in CD hash, matched up to here, patched in CD hash. So this is the code that's running when you see this in the syslog. So if I SSH into my phone now, apparently depackage. So where would depackage be? It's going to be in the bin, isn't it? Or not? Where would it be? Let's think. Bin. User. Bin. Depackage, there it is. Killed 9. Binary is unsigned. Okay, we need to sign it. JTool, sign SHA-1 in place. Entitlements, let's use these. And then depackage. This might not work though. Yeah, still not working. It's because after the check, Amphi's check has been run once, I think it caches the hash that it originally had somewhere. So even if I show you the signature on this binary, user bin depackage, even though it does have a signature and it has entitlements, you can see at the bottom there, 512 bytes. It still won't let it run. I have a feeling though, if we see into here, if we copy depackage into here, I call it depackage 2. Nope, still nothing. Okay. Let's SCP this back over to my desktop. Then add 1, 24. Okay, it should be on my desktop now. Alright, yeah, there we go. Depackage 2. Okay, let's have a look at the file. Probably means 32-bit. I've got another one here. Fox just sent me one that we can use right here. Let's have a look and see. Okay, let's SCP that back over to my phone. Oh, I need to change the port. Okay. Let's read through questions. Hey Stack. Do you think 11.2.5 will get a jailbreak soon after the exploit from the exploits from Zimperium, assuming we are talking about the same one here, only affects 11.2.0 to 11.2.2. It was patched in 11.2.5, hence why it's now been released now, after the 90-day patch time. So I'm sure one day we'll see an exploit for 11.2.5, it's just a matter of time. Not to mention the exploit that was just released still needs a kernel bug as well, so it's not 100% yet. RMM make a copy, yeah, it caches it. Can you go back and explain the process of jailbreak and what needs to be done before an IOS is broken? Okay, yeah, sure. So once you have so the first thing you need is an exploit, and an exploit involves lots of things, and obviously I'm not great at kernel exploitation or anything. I don't really know much about it, and I generally leave it up to the people who do know what they're doing, because they always do a great job of it. So killed my, okay, this is probably, let's hope we get some logs in here, but maybe not. Oh yeah, here we go. Missing code directory. So yeah, what's probably happening here is that it can't read the code directory because this is set up to use, so if we look at this get code directory function, which is up here, I believe, yeah, here. You see this is Mac header 64, so that'll only support 64-bit binaries, so we can fix that. I'm gonna have to have a look how. So where was I? So yeah, so you need exploits. You need some sort of code execution. You need code execution within sort of privileged areas, so like daemons or whatever. It all depends basically on the end goal, which is your kernel bug. And your kernel bug is basically some way of getting either read-write into kernel or getting code execution within kernel. And that's important because pretty much kernel's like God in iOS world. There's things after God, but as far as we're concerned, kernel is God. So we kind of need to talk to God and be able to rewrite bits of code in God's data to be able to unlock our devices, if you see what I mean. So what was I doing? I'm going to have a look at the electrocode and see, this will be on the cool stars replay, and see what they're doing differently. One great thing about this kind of new style of open source jailbreaking is that so much of it is obviously open source. It's free for you to use, so you can just hop on GitHub, go and download what XYZ jailbreak and poke through the code, see if you can figure out what's going on. Yeah, okay, this shouldn't be too hard. Alright, so we're reading the file, checking we can read it, and then rather don't want a header. I want magic freed magic magic, and then 1, and then fd, which is our file. Then we have fseek, fd0, seek set. Okay, so that replaces that code. Then we need to figure out the offset and the number of commands. So I think in the macro header there's like, actually I might be able to see this with JSON if I run this on the SSH shell here. Oh, this might just be code signing slots. Yeah, it is, I think. Line 308, what have I done? 308, 308. Oh, here? Calm down, Stack, Jesus. Oh, here, const. Okay, line 308 is paid. Line 308 is no more. J2H. Genius, 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 genius. That's still the wrong window though. SSH, please. There we go. So you can see 17 commands here, and I think these are just different bits within the Mako header. And the header just sort of has general information about the file. So one of the things that's in the header is the code directory, which is where our code signing hash is, and I think there's other information like the file type, whether it's like a library or an executable. So we can mh magic 64. Alright, so that covers 64-bit, and we can check if it's 32-bit. That'll just be mh magic. That's just a regular Mac header. Of equals size of mh, and then mcd equals. Is that good? Is that good? Is that good? Should be good. Okay, and then we'll just put in an else that's like complains payload perfect, and then return null, I guess. Okay. Alright, so let's change this. This should be fairly similar, I guess. So we can get rid of this, we don't need this. I think this might be fine actually, as it is. Yeah, I think that's good. Okay, let's grab. Let's compile that. Print. Oh, I need printf, and I need number of commands. Oh, this needs to be name. Okay. Alright, we should be good. So let's reboot and then spend 3 hours waiting for not Meridian, Vortex to work again. Fan's annoying me. I need to unplug that. Remember the days of Jailbreak? Me sat around with red snow tide. I remember those YouTube videos of people running around stores like is it Best Buy? That store in America. And going onto all the display iPads and jailbreaking them all. Like a 20-second clip of someone just running around the store. Right, let's see if this will ever run. Jailbreak me in times indeed. So theoretically, on the topic of jailbreak D, although maybe not quite as amazing, in theory Meridian could be untethered, because in iOS 10.3 and lower, so it was patched to 11, but in 10.3.3 and lower, there is the Wi-Fi firmware, which is loaded onto your Wi-Fi chip, is unsigned. And what unsigned means is that it's not checked for integrity before the system actually loads it onto the Wi-Fi chip. And the special thing about the Wi-Fi chip is the Wi-Fi chip's kind of, well, it's the same as, you know, how you'd have a Wi-Fi PCIe card in your desktop. It has this like buffer of PCIe access. So in theory, you can load this unsigned. Oh, it worked. Great. Alright, let's see. In theory, you can load this unsigned code right on boot. It just gets loaded straight off disk, it's not checked, so you just load it up, and you then have code execution, which is like basically what you need for an untether. Then it's just a matter of fact of whether you can figure out how to sort of execute either a regular binary or actually run the exploit directly from the Wi-Fi firmware. But you'd probably want to do that. You'd have to do that through the system itself. So, but who knows? It's probably worth me getting a testing device so I can play around with it without worrying about breaking my i7 or losing Wi-Fi on it. Although I'm sure Apple would love to replace that for me if I did. Oh, look at that. That's beautiful. That is beautiful. That is beautiful. So, I bet dpackage works now. Where is it? In user bin. User bin. Dpackage. SHA-1. Perfect. User bin dpackage. Oh! I'm a genius. Awesome. Okay. That's awesome. I'm glad that's fixed. So let's go onto our Trello. Wherever that just disappeared to. And we can check that one off. Completed. Beautiful. Right, so we've got K execute. We have then jailbreak D itself with amphi D. So we can do this one now, and then we'll see. So let's go over what we just did here. So there's two types of binaries you can have. You can either have 64-bit or 32-bit, and for a long time, Apple or iOS was all based on 32-bit. But with iOS 10, they introduced 64-bit, and then with iOS 11, they now force 64-bit. So 32-bit apps like Doodle Jump don't work anymore on iOS 11, and that's because 32-bit isn't supported. I think. It might just be apps actually. I'm not sure. Anyway, we want to support 64 and 32-bit binaries because that will enable a lot of backwards compatibility, like for older tweaks, and for example, dpackage is 32-bit, at least the version that I'm using currently, and it will generally make life easier for me and for anyone that wants to use Wi-Fi chip exploit works in 10.3.3 and lower, so all versions of iOS 10. It was patched in 11.0. Anyway, yeah, so this will allow the amphi D patch, well, allows the amphi D patch to read the hash that it needs to add to the OS dictionary, which contains the hash, because before it would only read 64-bit hashes. So that's awesome. That was easier than I was expecting, to be honest. Oh yeah, 64-bit came with not iOS 10. It was with the iPhone 5S, so it would have been with iOS 7, because the 5 was iOS 6. Right. So the next thing we need to do is, so amphi D works, it's a launch daemon, it's a daemon, and what that is it's handled by this thing called launch D. And launch D, that means all iOS 10 versions can have an untethered jailbreak, yes, with Meridian, or whatever. But I need to do like loads of research. I need to pull Wi-Fi firmwares, I need to dig through, I need to see what's actually possible with that exploit, whether it's as powerful as I hope or think it is. I need to see whether one firmware will work on all devices, or, you know. Kalashnikov is a good song, dude. Good band. Fucking love a bit of UK hip hop. I just put together this playlist and I'm like loving it right now. 10.3.1. I'm 10.3.3 and lower. It was patched in 11.0. It works on all versions of iOS 10. You're trash, Jam. You're trash. This is not even grime. This is hip hop. It's a complete difference. I have mistress. I have mistress. What are we doing? So yeah, amphi D is handled as a launch daemon, and normally in a launch daemon they're set up so they can. I wonder if SSH is running, if I can show you. I don't know if these daemons are actually stored on disk or not. The plist files for them stored on the disk. I don't think they're under here. Oh, that's the wrong folder. Is it not here? Launch daemons. Launch daemon directory iOS. Let's have a look on iPhone Wiki here. So I know normal, like jailbreak Daemon, ampy. Let's go under this folder here, library launch daemons. So open SSH or flux or whatever. Doesn't really say. Okay, well, anyway, this shows the flags. So one of them's keep alive, and that basically means if this binary ever dies. So I can actually show you this in action. So amphid is set up with the keep alive flag, and that means if this binary is ever killed, well, no, it's not set up, which is the no, it is set up. It is set up, yeah, it is set up. And it says if this binary is ever killed, relaunch it if you need to. So if I kill this here, kill all -9, -9 means force, and then I use the PID 215. Apparently not. What's going on? Oh, kill all takes a name, that's why. Amphid. There we go. So Amphid is now dead. The reason why PS and grep are working here is because they've already been signed, so Kernel sort of trusts them. It knows they're legitimate, and it doesn't bother testing them, checking them again. So Amphid's dead right here. The problem is, if we try to use a binary that we haven't used before it was killed, so hasn't been trusted by the kernel, it won't work. So RM gets killed, and you can see down here my my patch actually picked up that it was killed. And the problem is, for whatever reason, I'm not sure whether this flag, I think this flag isn't used. I think it's a different one, but I'm not sure which. But basically, after it's killed, it isn't relaunched until it's needed again. So if we check PSOrgs, you can see it was now relaunched after we tried to run RM, but it didn't work because other way around. It didn't work because it wasn't running at the time, but as soon as we ran grep here, it loaded back up, and you can see down here, that's what happened. You see the patch detected after this unsigned binary was tried to run, that it was relaunched. And the problem is here is that if we go again, RM will now work, but the interval between amphid being killed and amphid being relaunched again means this will happen sometimes. And I know this is going to confuse people and annoy people and frustrate people. So a temporary workaround we can use, well, a kind of hacky workaround we can use, is to, after the patch detects that amphid's died, we can just try and spawn something manually to force it to launch again. And that means, in theory, this should never happen. So what I'm probably going to do is just pick directory Meridian. So I can just pick a random binary from the binaries folder. Like, what's a good one to use? Time. That'll do. Time. Okay, so we're in the patch here, and no, we need to bin this one. So this is how it works. Hello? Whatever. So when this amphid fucker binary is launched, first thing it does is say hey, and I can show you that in the log set. So the jailbreak runs, and it launches, it says hey, and then we sleep for 500,000 milliseconds. No, not milliseconds, microseconds. And the reason why we do this is because I'm fairly sure this binary needs specific sort of permissions or entitlements, and they're not entitlements in the like file sense, but entitlements in the kernel's memory. And I can actually show you where this is done. This is done by might be in helpers actually. Helpers. Fuck. Okay. Here it is, grant CS flags. So, these CS flags do things, I'm not sure what, but they're kind of like permissions, and get task allow is, I assume that's used for getting tasks, other binaries, get task for PID, this one, get task. And this removes a couple of flags, and this has to be done after the binary is launched. So we don't want the binary to start trying to execute code before it has these CS flags, otherwise it may error out. So what we do here is we just wait half a second, 0.5 seconds for it to add those flags in, and we give it a good amount of time. The next thing to do is grab task for port 0. So Vortex by default patches in a task for Kernel in hostget special port 4. You see that here, which is like an unused port, and you can read up on that because I don't really know how it works. But ports basically let you allocate tasks sort of like globally, I think, to the system, and then they can then be like accessed. So you can see that's here. Reads the port, gets TFP0. We also have to pass kernproc address as the first argument, and what kernproc address allows us to do is, so in the proc struct there are two fields members of the struct which let you loop onto the next process and the last process, and basically that's a big chain loop, so you can imagine it kind of like a circle of processes, and so by reading through that circle you can basically find any process that's running on the system, and this value is just an entry into that big circle starting at kernel. And you could probably find this with Patch Finder, but I'm kind of lazy, so I just did it by passing it manually. And as I showed PSAUX earlier, here you can see this is the first argument here, so it gets encoded into a string and then can easily be passed and retain its actual value without being messed with. So that's past the first argument, and then that's decoded and saved for later use. Then we get a task for Amphi, and we can delete this here. We then open up a while true loop, so this keeps the binary alive and stops it from exiting. So we subscribe to a KQ, and what KQ is, as far as I know, it's kind of like you get notifications about a binary, and so when something happens, an event is raised on that KQ, and you can see we're watching for a here. So it will hang at this K event call until something happens, and then this code will run. So you can see we go got amphid task, and then it injects it, and then payload blah blah blah, and then it got KQ. And so it's waiting, it's actually waiting here. This is the last message we get, it's waiting here. It doesn't show this message because this code here, this K event call, makes the binary sort of hold. And you see the rest of our jailbreak runs and things happen, and then when amphid is killed, as I showed you earlier, if I can actually find the message, then the K event is raised when it's killed, and you can see that here, and this allows the code to continue. So we discard the KQ because we don't need to subscribe to it anymore. We log a few messages. We get another task, a task for the new amphid, which has just been relaunched, and we patch it using that function, which is like up here. And this basically just loads our payload, which patches it. So theoretically, what can we do? This get amphid task here will hold until the new amphid is found, which can take some time. So you see here, there's like a gap in between when it detects Amphidia's died, and then when it's actually relaunched and it grabs the new process ID, and it's just hanging in this while loop on a second delay until it's relaunched. So if we remove that sleep there to make that loop slightly faster, and then as soon as Amphidia's died, we'll just call POSIX spawn on our, I don't remember the syntax for POSIX spawn. I think the first arg is the binary, so Meridian bins time, and then it's null, null, null. I'll have to check this actually. This will be in helpers. Here we go. So the first one is PID of the binary, so that's null. Prog is program arguments, so that will just be a binary. Time. Child actions, don't need that, don't need that. That is just our binary again. Actually, I think this needs to be an array. Const char array. And then we end that array with null, and then I think just one more null. Then we can just log that message out to nslog so we can see that it's happening. Let's go through some questions. Is music different in the UK? I guess so. Pop music's quite different. It's all the same genres that you expect, I guess. If an untether was made, would it have any effect on success rate, or will the phone just sometimes take several frames? Sorry, so that's actually a really good question, and that's one of the big problems with the untether. So obviously the first thing I want to do is update to the newest Vortex, because in theory that has a lot better of a success rate than the current one that we're using. And I'd also like to improve that further if possible. If, you know, maybe some of the offsets need work, etc. Or if there's any way to improve that. So obviously what you don't want is the jailbreak putting your phone into this sort of like soft boot loop where it's still working in theory, but it won't boot because the jailbreak runs and then crashes it. And that could happen like over and over again, like 20 times until it finally runs. And that'd be super shit. So I was thinking about, if possible, depending on how much access you have to the file system, sort of creating this, just creating a little file, and in the file will just be, it'll be cleared on a successful boot and jailbreak. And every time the device boots, the untether is run, and the first thing it does is checks that file and says, okay, what's the number in this file? And say the number's 3. That number is going to represent the amount of times that the phone has booted or boot looped since the jailbreak was last run. So when it's run successfully, it's set to 0, and then it stays for 0 while your phone is alive. And you shut it down, it's still 0. Start it up, it's still 0. So it goes, okay, it's 0, that's less than 3. We're going to run this. We're going to try and exploit the device. And so it increments that number. That's the first thing it does. It increments that number, sets it to 1. And then it tries to run the exploit, and maybe it fails. So it reboots. Same process happens again. It reads the number, it says 1. Okay, we can try a couple more times. So it sets it to 2, and then it tries to run. And then maybe it fails again. The same thing happens again. It tries to read the number number says 2. It says, okay, we're going to try one more time. It tries to run it. It doesn't run. Phone restarts. The untether starts again when the phone boots up, and it looks at the file and it goes, no, we've run too many times now, 3 is enough. I'm going to set this to 0 and not run the jailbreak. So your phone will be unjailbroken, but then obviously you can just load up the app and jailbreak that way, or reboot the device and start the process again. Maybe if you want to manually reset the file, I guess I could add that into an app. So there are kind of ways of sort of either working around it or working with it to make it a little less painful. But one of the great benefits of having an untether is that you don't have to worry about signing, and you don't have to worry about persistence and losing your jailbreak. You don't have to be so bothered about restarting all the time. Can I show you my Spotify playlist? As much as I'd love to, because my Spotify is huge. I have like 10,000 songs on there. It's linked to my Facebook, I think, at the moment, so I'd need to unlink it first, or sort that out. Rust is awesome. If you like Rust, you'll love Legion Rust. Legion Rust is like what I usually work on I don't know if anyone was asking about that earlier. So I'm a C# developer, and this is one of like the main projects that I usually work on. So this is Rust Legacy. This is an older version of Rust game, and we've basically written an anti-cheat for the game because hacking was really prevalent after the game was kicked off Steam. Obviously, we don't have VAC anymore. We don't have EAC. Don't have Face Punch. So we kind of came in and said, okay, we want to revive this game, but we're going to need some anti-cheat. So we wrote some anti-cheat, and then this is actually my work. I patched a bunch of these hacks that you can do. So as well as with the client-side anti-cheat, which actually runs on your desktop and is responsible for launching the game. There's also a bunch of shit patched server-side. And there's a lot more to it than this. I'm currently working on this big client-side modding project, so we can actually load up like mods and assets on your client, like new building parts. You can see some examples here. So this is like a little alien model, and there's these wooden ladders, and this current position thing here. This was just sort of like a testing thing, but this is like an example of what you can achieve with it. So it's a lot more powerful than just having server-side mods. And I guess you can go and read the website if you want. It's pretty cool. How the fuck are cheats related to Rust program? Dude, the amount of time I've searched things to do with Rust, and it's come up with the programming language rather than the game. Ugh. All the time. Right, there's also some included fat binaries. Okay, we need to test fat binaries according to Fox. Fox says we must test. So Moderator shows this. Okay. Let's get this. What do we got in here? Can JTOL view? I can spell. 5 different architectures. Woo. The problem is JSON won't resign this if this isn't signed. So I can't test these, they won't run. Could you sign each arc with Eldred and I guess we can try. V7S. Let's sign that. How strange. How strange. So it looks like the AmpD patch actually patched it fine, but it was still killed. Let's put Kernel in here as well, and then that might give us some information as to why. Or just nothing, because it works as well. Okay. Oh, okay, it's just outside of container. So we just need some entitlements. But it might be too late. They might have been cached already. Why can I not spell fox today? Tarek said follow fox. It's probably because of the same hash. How stable is my hack? It's just stable as hell. I mean, that issue with it looking at me earlier, I think it was just because it was too hot or something. I'm not sure. But, or maybe my CPU was like under too heavy load. So it seems to be a bit lower now. But other than that, it's been stable as hell. Like, I've developed this entire jailbreak running on this. Although, in fairness, it is like fairly compatible hardware. So it's a 4790, 16 gigs of RAM, and then I've got like a gigabyte motherboard, so that works. That's like Gigabyte's like got the greatest compatibility I think out of all motherboards. And then 970, which has the Nvidia drivers. But yeah, it's really stable. So still getting killed. Let's try signing. Let's try one of the other binaries. Just make sure this works. Yeah, that one works fine. Cool. Oh, should we test? Let's test 64-bit desktop for fun. This won't work, but. It's signed. This might not have, yeah, bad CPU side. That's expected. To be expected. Spare gigabyte board laying around. Yeah, Gigabyte's generally like really good compatibility with pretty much, as long as it's not like X99 or anything too high-end or workstation class. It should be good. Yeah, 32-bit binaries are working, which is awesome. Remember a soft loop like that happening with under Eon says on iOS 9 jailbreak due to the KPP race failing a lot due to the people being unlucky. I actually never ran iOS on, I think ever, iOS 9. Because I had my iPhone 5 for ages and ages and ages. And I think I got it on iOS 8, and I kept it on iOS 8 because there was a jailbreak out at the time. It was like it was either 8.1.2 or 8.4.1, but I think it was 8.1.2, or maybe even 8.2, if that existed. So I had it on that jailbreak for a while, and then I wasn't really in the scene, and I bothered updating to iOS 9, and so I never really experienced that jailbreak. But that is potentially what can happen, like the jailbreak, the exploit failing and device rebooting. So it is something to be concerned about, and it is one reason why it may not happen, so don't get too excited. Yeah, it would have been 8.1.x. I remember it was untethered. What's the difference between Eldid and JTool? Eldid was written by Sorek ages ago, and it was like designed as in the first toolchain that he wrote for developing tweaks on iOS. So like when he wrote, I think, did he write Theos? Well, when Theos was written for developing tweaks, they also needed to be fake signed, so they worked properly on iOS, and that's what Eldid was originally used for. And then Comics created Eldid 2, which was an iteration above Eldid, which supported, I think it supported SHA-256, and also enabled things to work on like newer versions of iOS. Oh yeah, I can show you the they're on the system apparently, the launch Daemon thing. Maybe if I can read this plist. So here are all the launch Daemons on iOS, and these run different things. So let's have a look on here. Nano Backup D. I don't know, but I'm assuming by the name that's responsible for maybe iCloud backups or iTunes Wi-Fi backups. Most of them are pretty. So Log D is probably to do with logging, maybe syslog, or iOS Diagnostics D is probably to do with iTunes Diagnostics and the same stuff that's responsible for iDevice diagnostics working. What else have we got in here? We've got a bunch of things. Report crash, AFCD, so that's AFC, which lets you access the file system, well, certain parts of the file system. Let's have a look for Amphi. That's not in there. So it's possible this is actually done within kernel itself. It might be under launch agents. Apparently not. Global Daemons. It's not in there. I don't know. Maybe it's not launched in them. I can still show you another one, I guess. Let's have a look at. This isn't where I relaunched Daemons. Let's do report crash, I guess. Complete list. Yeah, this won't read it properly. Cat doesn't support plist properly. I don't think I had PLUC on here either. Nope. Did you enable VODs? I didn't. I should probably do that, shouldn't I? I'll do that for the next time because I don't want to upload half a stream. Where was I? Elder. So Elder was originally made and then updated by Comics to Elder 2. J-Tool was made by Jonathan Levin, and it's basically a successor to O-Tool, I think, which was kind of a similar thing. And it has a lot of really cool functionality. One example is that I use it all the time is for looking at signing signatures and entitlements and updating them. Why doesn't Meridian work on 10.2.1? It's an issue with Vortex. I'm going to work with Suguja to fix when he's finished with exams in a couple of months. Yeah, Amphi is probably done in kernel. Why doesn't Meridian? What's my YouTube channel? I'll post my YouTube channel on my Twitter when I upload the VOD. Why is 2.2 still signed? I think they unsigned it by accident. I think it was meant to be signed and they unsigned it by accident. Either that or they saw my tweet and they decided that they actually feel really bad and that they're going to sign it again. I think that's definitely what happened. Let's pull this binary you sent me anyway. Yeah. Let's do this. What direction? Ba 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 ba. Nice. Let's see what entitlements you've given it here. Perfect. Oh dear. That's not good. Why did that not work? It's weird that it didn't even show up in syslog though. It should do. I don't see why it wouldn't. What's an easy way of logging to syslog? I guess we could launch the injector without providing it anything. Apparently not. You can try. This should be logging. Why is this not logging? The phone's still live. Oh, here we go. Okay, it's back. let's try and run this fat binary again. Ha. Ha ha ha. Missing code directory. Okay. Oh, we were in the wrong file. That's why. This is better. Some code directory. Ha. So it definitely found the... It didn't return here, or we would have seen this message, failed to open file, and obviously the file is there, so that's kind of common sense. It passed one of these checks, otherwise we would have seen this message. So it looks like it couldn't read the load command from the binary. Sagon implements. Yeah, Sagon patches kernel though. That's the problem. Let's look at the code. But I'm pretty sure all the Amphi stuff is patched out in kernel, so it's probably not much use. Where's it done? Under here, I think. I think that's the KPP bypass. Nonce enabler. So yeah, this is where it patches out Amphid. Yeah, so it just zeroes out the NAC policies. Don't know what else would. Portal, I guess, because I know it implemented this Amphid patch where it would set up his own binary as a exception handler, and then write a crashy value to Amphid here to cause it to crash, and then magic happens and stuff would be passed over to his code. Yeah, here's what's happening. So the exception gets raised, checks thread state, so it gets the file name, Amphid hash size, get hash for Amphid. Okay, let's have a look at this. This is probably somewhere else. Does Electro support FAT? From what I can see, the code hash check is exactly the same between Electro and Meridian, so I doubt it, but it might be worth asking. Let's have a look at this. Find CD hash. This works by find the code directory. Let's compare this to our code here.
Sociable with the guys down below, cool, but soon realised I was being too hopeful. I don't know cars and I can't throw darts, so I knew in my heart that I stood no chance. I tagged along with a gang of vagabonds, but my plans to bond went badly wrong. I got nervous trying to rob purses.
Find CS block. Let's look at that.
I spent the night with some hippie types.
So this only supports 64-bit. Yeah, this won't be much help either. What's the time? 8:30. Right here. 8:30. It's up here. Is fat binary support necessary, or could we technically recompile everything? I probably shouldn't open Twitter. I wonder if it'll work without. I'll actually put this on the let me look at electrocode again. This is the code that Electra uses for reading the code directory. Let's check this. Other than that, it's the same, so. Where's that defined? Can I see the value of that, please? No? Okay. So we can replace it with that, but what is it? What's the code signature? What am I doing? What am I doing right now? Fixing the AmpVD patch to work with 32-bit binaries, which we've just done, and fixing it to work with. Let's look at this. Fixing it to work with fat binaries. Okay, header. this is the same, I think.
I'm cruising like hang gliders, making moves like atoms in the hadron collider. Who's badder, who's wiser, who do you root for? I know the latter's the survivor. Calibrate the mind like scales, weigh your life up. Evaluate the difference of money and something priceless. Trust you can't buy this. Come to make decisions, the ones you take will define ya. Think twice before you step in my lane. Catch these bars, you know I play it like a sport, yo. They can't get near, but making sure they catch me. Primo production, never repro like factories. Never see us fall off like bad leaves, but bad seeds will grow and give MCs bad dreams. The face reads, take caution. Rain fire like the 4 horsemen. We cut them off before their first breath like an abortion. Like a vinyl, see a fake start warping, taking bids in a room full of rich pricks like an auction. We hammer down. Independent, we never lived in glamour town. Swing my crown around, punch sound for sound. Use their power like Aikido. Shit man, I take it off and beat them with their ego. Keep the rhyme scientific. Now it's studied like the Mayans writ it. Coded lines to design specific. When I was younger, bump the realness, I had to spit it. We're underground, you wanna feel this, you have to dig it. Think twice before you step in my lane. Catch these bars, you know I play it like a sport. Anything that come this way bound to ricochet. Praying on my downfall, now you best think again. Make the right decision, apply the wisdom. Ever on the rise like the price of living. I sit and talk to my alter ego. Things change, will it alter me though? He's so scandalous, just landed at Heathrow. Head still flying though, magic rap dynamo. Some died of old age, sitting trying to blow up. But I chase dreams so I won't die in hope. I try and
This looks the same.
under the microscope, heavy on the heart like years doing lines of coke. After hate, all that's left is pain. So best think twice about yesterday. We say yes today, not tomorrow, cause the aim is to set the pace, not to follow the owl. Think twice before you step in my lane. Catch these bars, you know I play it like a sport. Think twice before you step in my lane. Catch these bars, you know I play it like a sport.
Aha, 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 aha. How's this different? How's this different? I assume it's just a different offset and a different number of commands. Fat header. Flabbergasted that rhythm, my stamina can be coming in handy. Flipping the script, I'm doing a what I'm telling a story, doing a plan B. How the fuck on earth did we become so angry? A couple years ago, man was just reading a dandy. So how'd I go from reading a Beano to beating up emo? Swimming in speedos to swinging in chinos, mimicking heroes to zeros. From Zorro to Tarantino, we're living like weirdos. Guess the level of violence increases as the fear grows. But just can't maybe it's the Indianness. It must be matching one of these though, because it would say if it's not. It's that it can't find this load signature. Where am I from? I'm from the UK. I'm from the southwest. Where's the bit where it... So the only thing it could be is the Indianness. vibrating. Probably my music. Take it you've done or do custom plugins for Oxide U mods. Yeah, that's how I got into development. That's what I do. That's what I was doing before this, that's what I'll go back to when I'm done here. But I want to finish up this stuff first, obviously, and maybe look at the WatchOS jailbreak as well. I'm not sure, I might need just another pair of eyes on this code. It's probably just the song. But if I skip the song, it's probably gone now. We'll put this on the to-do list. This is done in theory, but I won't do this off here. Put it on low priority then. Probably needs to do it. Okay, let's test if this one worked. I don't remember if I rebooted or not though. So I think I did.
Hello? Yo, what's good, man? It's Stick. Listen, I know this is a bit out of the blue, but any chance I can borrow some money off you? Hello?
No, I didn't reboot, I guess. Let's reboot my phone, recompile. Fucking hate this bug with X code where your device crashes and then it won't let you kill these zombie instances of the app.
Don't front of me, man. Listen, I need that money, man. I'm shop.
I work twice as hard as the next guy. On the hustle till the second at the check sign. I don't believe that I can settle in my next life. You're only here once, you know, and homie, I'ma get mine. But I ain't all about the peso. I don't play dog with
When will we be able to install tweaks? When I finish all these things on the to-do list. I'm gonna finish this. When I finish this, and then tweaks will work. And then I need to finish this to let the package work properly. And then we need to sort this out so you can install stuff with Cydia. Then I need to do these two before we release it. This is the slow work. Oh yeah, dude. I've been doing this for nearly 3 months, 2.5 months maybe. No, 2 months. 2 months. It was around the start of December where I started this up. This thing is, oh, I didn't mean to do that. I didn't mean to do that either. The thing is with all of these things on this list is like, this is like 5 minutes, this is done. This will probably be like a few hours, because we have to figure out why this code that should theoretically work, because it's based off code from Vortex, doesn't. Probably use LLDB to debug it and figure out what's wrong. This is like, this needs an entire list. Like, there's like a huge number of things to this. But hopefully it will just work right away. But who knows? I thought that when I first implemented it, I was like, yeah, it'll work fine, it'll be fine, and then it didn't. So That's obviously not great. This is a big one. This needs fixing. Otherwise, Cydia won't work properly. I'm gonna try and hook it within Jailbreak D, but God knows within Launch D even. God knows if that'll actually work. It'll be a really hacky solution as well. I don't really know about this one. I don't know how much work that will be. This will be kind of big. I mean, in theory, in a perfect... Oh, fuck, I did it again. In a perfect world with this one, you just point Jailbreak D and... not Jailbreak D. SB inject and Cydia at the same folder to dump tweaks, and it will just work. But if everything just worked, the world would be amazing. Let's find another playlist. And wait for Vortex to run. Hackintosh using it on video web drivers. Yeah, that's what we use. It works really well. Oh, only thing is, it's kind of a pain when they don't update them. Like for ages and ages and ages, they didn't update them for Sierra, so loads of people stayed on El Capitan, and it was kind of a nightmare, especially when things like Xcode just stopped working outright on older versions of OS X, because Apple are bad. Ooh. Why so painful? Why? Shall I stream myself working on Cydia implementation? Sure. Go for it, dude. Are you working alone on Meridian? You can do a lot with them there. More hands, more doing. I am working alone. I'm working with a few people. I'm kind of learning as we go. And a lot of the other developers have been really helpful. And Fox has helped loads. Fox is amazing. How old are you? I'm 16. I'm 17 in like 9 months. Which would be great. Finally be able to drive. And hey, does Meridian open source? It will be when it's finished. The reason it's not open source at the moment is because I do not want a million different forks of Meridian running around ruining people's devices, because people are impatient and people will install those forks and people will write those forks for God knows what reason. And so I'm keeping it private until it's released, and at that point you can go wild and make as many dark themes of Meridian as you want. But until it's finished, well, until RC0, release candidate 0, when we have Cydia, and we have tweak injection, and we have basically a full functioning jailbreak, probably with a lot of bugs, but a full functioning jailbreak nonetheless, then it will be open source. Don't want a million Daemon sort of guy either. No, I don't. That'd be the worst. I probably won't release it in a state similar to Electro, where you can install tweaks but you have to do it manually through shell, because dev installers are a thing, and I don't want people... I don't want people having like half the experience, just for the sake of having it like a few weeks earlier. and B, I want to push out like a kind of a more finished product. Not to say that Electra's unfinished, but I want to kind of do it all at once in one big update and give people, you know, something to look forward to, build some hype around it. The PBs we have at the moment are basically just tests. Like, we've gone through like 6 PBs, I think, and each of those has fixed, like, well, I'd say like 4 of them fixed pretty substantial issues, which were only ever raised because of the PBs. Like, before I actually put out the first PB, I had no idea that it didn't work properly on lower than 10.3. I had no testing devices, I had no one to test for me, so I'm just kind of just hoping it would work when I did that. Let's see if PS org scrap MPD. I'm going to kill all MPD. Yeah, there we go. Lovely. Perfect. So it just instantly launches that time binary, and it returns 85, which is, it was killed by POSIX spawn. It was not killed by POSIX spawn, it was killed by MPD, or Amphi itself. Oh, it works every time. Almost. I think we killed it too soon. I think. Oh no, there it is. I wonder if time is broken. Okay, so time works. Let's try another one. Let's try kill. Nice. So we kill Amphi, and then we run like a binary, and it just works straight off. Beautiful. Okay, we can take that off then. That's pretty nice. So that means people won't be having weird issues where like they go to open an app and it closes, but it only happens once. Like instantly closes, like crashes. Done. Perfect. So to do this, we need to fix this. I guess we can work on this. And we could also do this as well. This probably needs the rest of it though. So let's have a look at hashbang scripts. I'm gonna. How long are we streaming for? Hour and a half. Right. I'm gonna take like a minute break. Go and grab a drink. Go and use the bathroom. Let's answer some questions. Because you don't know what other people do to Goblin, right? Yeah, I was kind of ashamed with the, what should I call it? The kind of small-time developer community. And I don't mean that in a way like small-time tweak developer. I mean like these small jailbreak developers who don't really know what they're doing, but see open source projects and think, oh yeah, I'm going to fork that, I'm going to fix like one issue or add some random like snake oil shit and release it, and end up breaking like thousands of devices. So that Xpreaks guy forked Goblin, or copied the source or whatever, and then added some shit, I don't know what it was meant to fix, and fucking started causing loads of issues. And obviously that's a massive nightmare for Stixron now, because he's got all these random fucking devices which randomly don't work just because this one guy decided that he was going to fuck everyone's shit up for him, and it's become a massive headache for him. Well, I'd imagine it has. I don't know to the extent of the damage, but that's what I really don't want happening with Meridian. So for now, it's closed source. Obviously, I'll open source it later because I want people to be able to learn from it as much as I am from other open source projects. But it's not worth it right now. I've been doing programming since I was like 12, 11 maybe, so I've been doing it a while. I mean 5 years, so, and I've been interested in like computers ever since I was a kid, you know. It just kind of comes naturally. But if it's what you're interested in, then you know the internet is an amazing resource. You can absolutely go out and learn like anything you want. So if you wanted to learn programming, if you want to know more about OSs and stuff, then you can go nuts on the internet in like a week, and you can know as much as I do, more than I do, just by doing research and hammering down and learning all that stuff. I mean, couple of weeks ago I knew nothing about this. I didn't know what KPP was or stood for. I didn't know what KTRR was. I didn't know what a fucking Mako binary or a Mako header was, or what amphid even does. So you could learn anything. Yeah, you could learn anything. Just look online for resources, learn about how shit works, learn how to program, learn C if you want to look at jailbreaking, learn how exploits work, and then kind of start. What I'd first do is write your own jailbreak based on like an existing one. So I don't mean like just go and copy and paste the source. Obviously use it for help if you need it, but just grab the exploit used in like Yellow or whatever, or Meridian, and then start with the post-exploitation side of things. So kind of outline what things you need to do, how you need to achieve them. Then look at other jailbreaks to see how they did it. Try and figure out what the code does, research it, ask people, because the developers in the community, as long as you're not asking stupid fucking questions, the developers in the community are amazing. Like, they'll help you with anything. So feel free to ask around and try and figure out what the code's doing, and then try and reproduce it. And you do that enough times, you get good enough, you start to understand things, and you'll be able to do it from scratch. And at that point, you can call yourself a jailbreaker. Read-write was intense. Read-write was like a long time. Read-write was a lot more difficult than I thought it was going to. What iPhone is connected to Mac right now? iPhone 7. I have a 9.3 iPhone 7, 128 gig model for all those dank tunes. Yeah, it's my 7 one. It's on 10.3.1. Yeah, exactly. Just edit a UI. That works. Right, I'm gonna go for 2 seconds. I will be back in a minute. Hey, hey, hey. Look who's back. If you want to do jailbreaks, learn C. If you want something easy but powerful, learn C#. At the end of the day, well, for me personally, I find I learn best when I'm kind of learning something out of necessity. So like when I first seriously started programming, I was actually making Minecraft plugins. And I think Seguza actually did the same thing. I think that's how he, well, not necessarily how he started, but he definitely looked into that. Or messed around with it. And I was kind of like, okay, I see all these plugins in this game, and I want to write my own. I want to, you know, do some things myself. And so I googled it up. I said, how do you make a Minecraft plugin? I found a video, and I started from there. Downloaded the clips, downloaded Bucket, you know, wrote a first little plugin that says a message when you do a command, and it kind of just spirals from there. And then you go, okay, what shall I challenge myself to make first? And you go, okay, I want a plugin that, you know, builds a little couple of blocks or whatever, place them down, or like does something when I hit a block. And then from there you just work your way up, and you challenge yourself to harder and harder things, and set harder and harder goals, and over time you'll improve out of necessity. And once you've learned a programming language like fairly well, or at least I know the concepts of it, those concepts can absolutely be transferred to other languages. So basic things like loops and, you know, if-else logic and binary logic, functions and routines, and all these kind of elements of computing and programming you can transfer to any language. Effectively it's all the same. Like, it might look vastly different, but programming is a really, really powerful tool, and obviously it's like one of the most high paid jobs because of it. Make a clip of that. Someone should. I've lost my train of thought now. But don't force yourself into doing programming if you don't enjoy it. You've absolutely got to enjoy it. If you don't enjoy it, then you'll never learn anything. You'll think, oh, I don't want to do this. This is boring. I can't be bothered. And you won't learn. Don't feel like you have to. Don't feel like you have to learn programming. Find something else to do if that's not what you enjoy. I mean, computing is a massive element. Like, I forgot the word for it. Computing's huge. Maybe you don't like programming. Maybe you don't like low-level stuff. Maybe you don't like writing apps. Well, maybe you'll like networking. Maybe you'll like server hardware or computer hardware. Maybe you really love the creative element of sort of building high-end systems for people. Or you like water cooling, or tech support. Maybe you're a really good people person and you're good at supporting them and finding issues, debugging things. Maybe you don't want to write software, you want websites. Websites for mobile, websites for console, websites for desktop, obviously. Maybe you want to be a game developer. Maybe you don't really like coding, so you decide that actually, okay, I'm going to hire a developer for me, and then I'm going to be like in control, and I'm going to design assets instead. All this knowledge is transferable between each field. It all has relevance, and it all pieces together to be what computing is. You're welcome. What am I drinking? I'm drinking a chocolate milkshake. I should really be drinking a glass of water or something. But yeah. My mouth's really dry. Right, anyway, what's on the list next? So we've fixed 32-bit binaries. And we've got AmpUD force restarting, so hashbang script is next. Now, hashbang scripts. Okay, so the first thing we want to do. So hashbang scripts is going to be patched in. Actually, we will have to restart for this, which is kind of annoying. We can live with it. So the idea I had for hashbang scripts, and this might not work, so like stack if you're there, like point it out, but pspawn hook, we're hooking launched in, we're hooking XPC proxy, and perhaps what we can do is we can detect if bin or sh is being called from running an sh script. So let's SSH in and test this. In theory, we should get this message logged here, and it's called. So we can do psorgs grep jailbreak d and make sure it's running. As you can see, PID252 there. So let's write a script. Speak a symlink as well from bin sh to source file bin bash bin sh. Okay, lovely. So let's what directory we're in here. Let's delete these hello fox stop binaries because we don't need this anymore. Package2 hello fox. Okay. So let's write a little script that just does God damn it. One thing that really annoys me about OS X is having the hash key on Alt 3, because in shell Alt 3 does random things like whatever that is meant to be. It doesn't even work in Nano at all. So I have to copy and paste it from somewhere. Massive pain. Echo, and then we want bin bash and a couple of new lines, and then we're just gonna have like hello there. What was zero on there? What the when I click Cydia, it reboots. AJ_Mo, what tool have you tools have you previously used to jailbreak your device? I suspect you're going to say either Goblin or Vortex Injector. We will see. Vortex Injector, most likely. Okay, what we're going to do, Mr. AJ Mo, we're going to go on the to-do list here, and under high priority, we're going to go find out what shit Vortex Injector is doing to fuck up Cydia for my lovely users and fix it. And that is going to go right below fix hashmark scripts. Assuming you've tried deleting Cydia with the delete Cydia option, or uninstall Cydia, what is it, delete Cydia, and then use the force reinstall option and his extract D package as well. If that doesn't fix it, then we'll have to look at like syslogs and see what happens. I don't know what it's done. It might have installed D package or something. Right, what's going on in test.sh here? I'm going to echo a bit more, so we're just going to echo another message, maybe a couple of backticks. That was not what I was going for. That's not it either. How do I do? Oh, I won't bother. Oh fuck. Right, let's give that execute rights, and then let's run it. And then it works fine. And then we think to ourselves, what is the problem? If there is no problem. That is not what I want us to do either. Are other interpreters needed? Or do all of them use bin bash or bin sh? That works fine too. How long am I here? I've been streaming for nearly 2 hours. This and yellow shouldn't conflict at all. So Meridian won't install Cydia if it detects it's already been installed. So if you use yellow and then use this to like just see if it's working, then it won't cause any issues. Writing the scripts, yeah, that'll work. I'm just writing using Echo because nano doesn't work properly under Meridian and I can't be able to fix it at the moment. And Echo works fine for what I'm doing, but SCP would work if you wanted to do that. Binaries other than bash calling bash. So if we use the bash that's under the bins directory, that's not under the bins directory. Okay, sh is in there. Oh, I know what this is. Sandbox violation. It's because it's trying to read outside of the allowed directories, and by default it won't have those permissions. The way we fix this is with jailbreak D. So that explains like so much. So I'm not sure why jailbreak D isn't actually being called here. In fact, I'm not even sure if it's being injected properly. Let me ask stack. Should jailbreak D be getting what's my YouTube channel? I'll announce my YouTube channel when I upload this stream to it. Am I going to complete all the tasks today? Probably not. There's quite a lot here. So I guess we can delegate this to temporary hold and put this below. So I'll add a bit of description to this. So when using interpreters outside. Okay. The low priority stuff, are these not needed to have Cydia and substring functional? This this is needed for fat binaries, and apparently most binaries on Cydia are fat binaries, so things will work, but whether everything will work, I'm not sure. So like maybe some tweaks won't work because of this issue. This is not at all important. This is just basically when I launch the app, a couple of entitlements like collide, and it's really bugging me because it's such a huge error. It's like all this, and I have no idea what constraints are causing it, and I can't be bothered to fix it because I don't know how to use constraints properly. I just kind of threw them ones together for the Meridian app. It doesn't even tell me which constraint it was or anything. It might have been the total label, but I'm not sure, so God knows. What keyboard do I have? I have a Razer Chroma Black Widow Ultimate. It's as much as people love to shit on Razer products, it's actually a really great keyboard. I've had it for over 3 years now. I think I've had it since 2014. I got it not long after I built my first PC, so, well, the one I'm currently using. I've had this for a few years as well. So, it's actually a really great keyboard. There's two issues I've had with it, and one of them is kind of my fault. The first issue is I believe the blue colour on the A key in the RGB LED isn't working anymore, but that's like not a massive deal. And the only other thing is I kind of have quite long nails, and where my nail rests on my spacebar, it's actually like rubbed off the finish and like left like a white mark of the plastic below it. But obviously that's like user error, you know. Is the 32-bit build on Git? Yeah, no, I will go and commit everything to Git right now. Corsair K85 RGB. Yeah, that's cool. I probably, if I was going to buy a new keyboard, which I'm contemplating doing, I'd either buy a DAS keyboard, just because for fast typing, I type like a 120 WPM peak, or it would be a Corsair K95, because A, it's a lovely keyboard, and B, they have some really nice, the app and the SDK, the support around it is great. So let's take a look at what we're changing here. So we and the payload, execute. Oh wait, that wasn't right. Oh well. I should probably be ignoring tar files, but what? How does this happen? Push. Okay. I'm actually pretty happy with how the Git's looking at the moment. I need to delete a bunch of branches like I've got like locally. Like this one. Offsets? What's offsets? I don't know what offsets is. So we can delete that. I just want to line it up with the remote branches. It's got 32-bit, Amphifun's gone. That was from ages ago. Got develop, master, new vortex, secret substrate, substitute. I might delete this. It's kind of not really needed. I was just playing around with substitute, substrate even. But I've also set up tags for each of the releases, so you can see really nicely. Like we started here at the end of December, and then did the UI, moved around the files, fixed up the UI some more, did all the credits, and then finished the UI, and then we did the logo, bin pack, path, bunch of stuff, and then that was PB1, and then did rewrite stuff. This took fucking ages. Read write, read write, read write, read write, read write, then read write again, and then it was finally fixed here, I think. I don't know. IBM Model M keyboards are really cool. It's kind of funny how like some of this vintage gear in the tech scene is still like really sought after today. Like those old keyboards and the older gear, vintage gear. It's using a Pi to convert PS2 to USB. Git on the command line is hardcore, dude. I couldn't do that. I barely even know how to use Git at all. I can just about handle making a tag or deleting a tag. Suguza. Hey, dude. It's the legend himself. He's made an appearance. Hey, you might be able to help with this actually. In Jailbreak D, I know nothing about this, bear in mind, so I'm kind of waiting on someone else to help me fix it. In Jailbreak D, we have a K execute call in here, and it's as far as we know, it's not working properly. If I added you in on the repo, do you reckon you can take a look and see if you can see anything wrong with it straight off? Because I have no idea what the issue is. I barely even know what it's doing. I know it constructs that IO user client and then uses that to execute code, but isn't that something? Yes, it is, but it doesn't work. Steck originally wrote this for Electra, and it works on 11, and he said he ported it from your kcall macro in Vortex, but for some reason it doesn't work on 10. I have no idea why. I can tell you that this works. I checked this with LRDB, but I tried to port over the kcall code exactly, but it relies on a lot of stuff that's like sewn into Vortex, so it was kind of confusing for me to do. Where is it? Here. So it's like this, but it's also like this object here, and like this struct, and then there's this macro, which relies on these ranges, which are from this, I think. And I think this here, maybe even more. I tried to have a look at it the other day, but it confused the hell out of me, so I gave up in the end. The ranges are just a passage in the allocation we have, because the fake port might be in any offset in that, so you need to organise stuff carefully around that. You can pretty much ignore it. Okay. Let's... I don't know why Steck didn't use this structure you have here when he wrote it, because in theory he's just recreating that all manually with the offsets, I think. Yeah, like you see here. I assume this a.func is that, which is that offset, but I don't know why I didn't just use the struct. And I do another stage of integration kcall, because the IO kid trap thing aborts if the first argument is 0. Oh, I see. Okay. I'm not sure, I don't know, if you ported the code over from 10 then it would make sense that it already works fine, but we were testing it with LRDB, and it didn't seem to want to work properly, so it was kind of strange. I am using an old version, because the new one still doesn't work. Well, it doesn't work. Where's that? Here? Where is it? Am I blind? Must be up here. Here it is. Oh, I see what you mean now. I think he must have ported from this old version then, considering that code's not present. All section objective must be removed. I'll wait until then. This is fine. That's cool. Yeah, I'll have a look at it at some point. Probably. I guess I can have a look at it like in a minute. But I have no idea what that thing does. That's why I didn't recommend installing it. It just looked dodgy. Wasn't worth it for the sake of shit. Being able to use like a couple of tweaks or whatever it's supported. Yeah, it looks like he didn't do the thing with the first argument. I don't know. Well, this doesn't really make sense to me. I'm not even sure which bit isn't working. I haven't had a chance to debug it. So. Won't shut the fuck up about making money. Making money in jailbreaking? What? You should see my PayPal like income chart. It's like a joke. Get Cracking is great, yeah. I really enjoy Get Cracking. And they're adding this, I just saw this morning when I logged in. This glow thing, which is like a really like fancied up issues UI. This looks really cool. This looks like Trello but built into Get Cracking, which is awesome. And it's in VS Code. Couldn't get better than that. Hold on, again with the non-wiring calloc. Yeah, that'll learn more. The non-wiring calloc? What the hell is that emoji? Calloc wide. What, like this, I assume? This is within Jailbreak D, bear in mind. This isn't within like a Meridian. I won't find it for that. That's what that colour actually is. Do you know what paging is? Like to page out? I know it's to do with memory, but not really. Don't want that for vtables, so you wire it. Where would you recommend starting to learn? Assuming I have a pretty solid grasp of C. Depends what you want to do. Depends what you want to do. Assuming you want to write. Jailbreaks is such an ambiguous term because there's so much that goes into a jailbreak. There's like two major parts. There's like exploitation, and then there's post-exploitation. And I choose this so I can learn something most this gibberish. Yeah, it's kind of hard to teach while you're working on fixing stuff because you know it's you want to fix stuff, but the stuff you're fixing isn't necessarily like easy to understand. Like I didn't even understand like half of this anyway, so that says a lot. But start with post exploitation if you want to learn, and just take, depending on what firmware version your phone is on or what testing devices you have access to, just take an exploit like Mac Portal or Vortex or like an older one like Pegasus or something, or Async Wake, whatever it might be. Take that exploit, figure out what you need to do to go from that kernel read-write primitive to like what you'd consider a jailbreak with like a shell and insidia and tweaks, and work through each step. So I'll go through what we do in Meridian if you like. I can show you kind of each of the main steps. So you load up the app. Oh shit, this is my web browser. What's it doing over here? You load up the app, you install it, and when you click that button, this code is called, and it does some DRM checks and blah 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 blah, and it runs Vortex, so it disables some of the buttons, and then we get into the fun stuff. So here it runs Vortex, and Vortex is our kernel bug, so replace that with like Async Wake or Mac Portal or Ziva and extra recipe. And then if it fails, it says it fails. If it succeeds, it goes to this make shit happen function. So let's jump over to that. This just prints out the values, and then we initialize some things. And then so the first thing we do is patch container manager D. And what patching means is we basically write kernel's ucred to container manager D's ucred. And if you don't know what that is, then obviously like you need to learn about how the kernel works and how processes are represented in kernel. So one thing that's good to read through is this. This is chapter 25 of Jonathan Levin's book, and this tells you like basically goes through everything. So it's got about bypassing KSLR, which is a defense mechanism, kernel memory corruption. So that I think this bit's more about Async Wake itself, the exploit. Then there's post exploitation, so focus on this part. So the first thing I think it talks about is calling kernel functions. Or is it? Wrong part. Manipulating process and task lists. So yeah, the task list is if you look sideways, this is basically a list of all the processes or the tasks on the system. And you can loop through this by starting a kernel proc and reading this previous element here, and this just loops you around to each of these proc structs, which represents a process. And then you can see here under the ucred section. So the ucred section is what we overwrite, and this contains the macf label, which is a bunch of sandbox policies and ampy entitlements and shit. And there's also the the UIDs of the process and like other stuff that's in here. So we basically just overwrite container manager's ucred, this right here, with the one from kernel to give it like some extra permissions for, I think it's for unsandboxing apps and stuff, but I'm not sure. Like it manages containers, but I'm not sure the effect of doing this. I just added it because I figured like it's probably something we need. So this one then remounts the disk OS1 S1, which is the system partition. And the system partition is like, this is like one of the easiest things to understand what it is. So you probably already know, but on your, it's the same, so in iOS it's the same as on your computer. In fact, I can even show you like mine. So I've got each of my drives in here when it loads. So I've got like this is my main SSD. Actually, I can show you in disk util because it's more in depth about partitions. So here you can see each of the partitions of each. So these are each of the drives, and then all these are partitions within the drives. And this is exactly the same as it is on iOS. So rather than a hard drive, you've got a NAND chip, and then it's still partitioned up. And there are like 3 main partitions, I believe. You unsandbox the sandboxing, use it one part there. Unbox the sand. You're hurting my head. Unsandbox the sandboxing, using one part. I have no idea what this is meant to do. I know container manager is to do with sandboxing and stuff, but so like this here is disk 1 OS1, and there's 3 of these on iOS. One of them has got the system partition on it, which is root, which is everything. The second one is private/var, and that's where like all your user data is stored. So all your apps are installed into containers there. All your data within those apps is stored there. All your photos, all your media, your iBooks, whatever you've got, that's stored within private var, and that's marked as read-write. But private var is fairly restrictive. Like, you don't really, generally in Unix systems, you wouldn't put anything in there. Say you wanted to run like dropbear or something, you wouldn't have that in private var. You'd have that outside in like /sbin or something for system bins, and that's why we want to remount the root partition, because that gives us access to the rest of this file system. There's also like one that stores the firmware for something, baseband firmware, Wi-Fi firmware. I'm not sure. Yeah, it's in var. So it's kind of like restrictive. So what this patch does, which I'm all too familiar with now, this calls this function here. And basically, there's an additional patch that we have to do on users pre 10.3, so 10.0 to 10.2.1. And that's because when Apple added APFS, they slightly modified the lightweight volume manager, which is responsible for mounting all those partitions and drives and things. And they actually removed a check that was additional before, making it slightly easier to remount this root file system. Before, what you do is you patch, like on older jailbreaks with the KPP bypass, you patch kernel directly to allow you to remount it simply, relatively simply. But obviously on KPP loss we don't have that. So Steck actually found another way of bypassing this patch, which is, oh shit, where's it gone? Yeah, Steck found a way of patching this in data, which we're allowed access to without having a KPP bypass. And if I show you the code here, basically what it does, I would show you the source for LWVM, but it'll take me ages to find it. Basically, the check, there's kind of 2 checks. Merge the 2 partitions. Oh, I see. Okay, that makes more sense. Well, I think that the check must have changed or something, because in theory it still shouldn't let you remount that partition. It's changed the mount flags on that partition, but I'm not sure. APF contains volume wide. I see. Okay. So because of that difference, we need this extra patch here. And basically, what this does is there's a check in LWVM. Let me see if I can actually find the slide, because it will probably help explain this a lot more. It was from Fried Apple Team, and they did a presentation on jailbreaking 10.2 or iOS 10. I don't remember what it was. Let me dig through and see if I can find it. Might take me a minute because it's quite a while ago. Here it is. Here it is. Perfect. Okay. So this here is like what the code looks like in there. So I'm not sure exactly what this is because obviously I can't see all the code, but this is like kind of like a representation of the checks. So partition index is checking if it's disk OS1 S1, which is the one we want to remount. That's your root file system. Block type, I'm not sure. I imagine that's something to do with disk. And then is root writable, and that's a function which is called to see, I guess, if it's already mounted as read write. Oh no, I think this is used when you're in like upgrade mode or something, and it needs to write to the root file system to actually update the system. And then this PEICAN has kernel configuration, which is like a kernel function in text, which I think is usually patched by most jailbreaks, but we can't patch this because obviously it's in text and KTRR stops us. So what we do instead is patch this function, which means this returns true. And we also patch this, so this block returns hold on. We patch this so it returns true, and this block returns false. And we patch this so this returns false, and then this block returns false as well. So this entire OR statement returns false, and therefore it doesn't error, and it allows us to remount. So this partition object is basically a representation of the disk partition in LWVM, and this is root write protected flag is does what it says in the tin, and that's patched up here. So I haven't really read through this code, but finds the volume manager, it gets a port for it, and it reads so it reads through the different partitions and then writes to, so make sure it's found the right one. So I assume this is probably, oh, this is write protected. So it finds the two partitions. It finds var and it finds root here and here, and then it finds the is write protected function and checks that it's returning 0 for var, which is mounted as read write, and it's returning 1 for the root partition, which is mounted as read only, and it then overwrites this is write protected member here with the 0, so this returns false. Then the other thing we have to do is this is write rootable thing, and this is done in the second part here. And basically this is write rootable function, I haven't looked at it at the source directly, but it basically checks the boot args, and it checks if certain options within the boot args are set, and this is used, I think, as I said before, during a firmware upgrade when the is right rootable, is root right, yeah, is right rootable, and when the device has to write to the entire system, it sets that flag in the NVRAM, and then when it's rebooted into restore mode, it reads those flags again and is able to upgrade. Or the other way around, those flags get set by iBoot, and then it's able to... Yeah, that makes more sense. The flags are set by iBoot when the device boots in restore mode or whatever, or OTA mode, and allows it to remount. So basically what this does is this, I think this patches the boot arg struct directly, and so does some magic stuff, and then in the boot args struct, it patches in this rd equals mx thing, which is literally all this function checks for. This is root writable function, and you can see they've actually written this on the slide next to it. So it basically checks like what the value of it is, and so we actually add in that value ourselves, and then that allows us to circumvent that former check. And once we've done those, we can then actually make our call to mount. And so bear in mind, these two things are only needed from 10.0, well, before 10.3, so before APFS. Then what happens is this remount root function, and this is what's all that's needed on 10.3 and newer. And basically what happens here is, so this mount function is like the magic of it, the majority of it. This actually calls to, I think, LWVM, and tells it to remount the file system at root on disk OS1 S1. And to do this, the mount actually has a check in it internally, which checks if the file system is the root file system. So is this like the root FS? Should we be remounting this? And so what we do here is we find that structure where that object is, and we find the specific flag, the flags that we need to update, and then we remove this root FS flag, and that unmarks the file system as the root FS. So it basically says, oh yeah, this is just, you know, this is private file, or this is the base my file, this is just some random file system you don't need to, it's nothing important, don't worry about it. And then we call to mount, and mount goes, oh okay, yeah, it's fine, yeah, it's nothing important, I'll just remount it. And it remounts happily, and then we actually write the flag back, so it doesn't, I assume this is so it doesn't cause any more issues like panics, etc. So that's the remount patch, and that took way longer than it should have. This was fairly trivial. This is like basically everywhere, this code. But the specific patches we had to do were, as far as I know, new. And Stick is a genius. Meridian probably wouldn't support those earlier versions if he hadn't done that patch, which is awesome. So that's another one of the big hurdles. I don't believe that's nearly as difficult in iOS 11 though. What's next? So remounts root FS, and this function just checks it remounted properly. It does a bit of environment setup, so it creates our Meridian folder and the logs folder. Then it launches the Amphi patch, and the Amphi patch is like, I could go on for hours about this Amphi patch, but basically what this does is this spawns this binary, which finds Amphi here, here, gets a task for it, and then injects this payload, this dilib, which is this here. And when this dilib is loaded, it has two jobs, or one job. Its only job is to patch this function, which is used within AmphiD for, well, as it says, validating the signature and copying the information. So we hook this function, and if a CD hash isn't present, then we just find it manually, find our faked one in the binary, whether that's SHA-1 or SHA-256, and then we update the hash in this info dictionary, which is here, with our hash, and then just return back to normal execution. And that completely fixes, well, not completely, there's still some issues with it, but it fixed it pretty well. So obviously you still have to have your binaries fake signed, and as far as I know, unless you can do it within launchd or something, you have to have them fake signed. But generally I don't think there's a problem. I think it's kind of common practice. I've never really made tweaks, but I think it's kind of common practice to sign your tweaks with LDID when you build them. So that patches amphd, which is kind of abusable because it's in the user land. It's a daemon, so it's we have access to that. Where's our view controller? Those are like the main two things that you need really. Patching amphi and then remounting the disk as root FS. And the rest of it is kind of just, this is just environment setup. So, well, this part of the post exploitation anyway. So this creates a few directories, a few files, creates a few directories for drop bearing things. This writes to your path to add the Meridian bins folder to your path for both var and root, not var, sorry, mobile and root. It creates the no stash file. If Cydia doesn't exist or hasn't been installed before, then it installs it, and that's just a matter of extracting this tar here to slash applications. And it launches dropbear on port 2222, and this is all substitute stuff. So this is all new, like relatively. Substitute and jailbreak is kind of like pretty big, so it's like my mouth's really hurting now. But the idea of it basically is you launch jailbreak D. Jailbreak D patches into hooks into a few things and detects when apps and stuff are launched, and then if it needs to, it does certain things depending on what the app is and what it's doing, or you know, so it can detect if it's amphd that's been launched, and it can like patch it, and it works for apps, so that's how tweaks are injected. It loads sb inject, which then looks in the tweaks directory and loads any tweaks that are set to launch into that app. That's like in essence what it does. It's obviously a lot more complicated than that. Like you have to set it up as a launch daemon, and you actually have to hook jailbreak D, not jailbreak D, XPC proxy and launch D. But yeah, so this sets up all the files, extracts a few bundles, trust them because they need to bypass team ID validation. It sets the environment variables, so kernel base is the base of the kernel after KSLR randomization. Kernel proc address is that kernel proc like circle I was talking about earlier. And zone map offset is going to be used, I think it is used for some memory allocation stuff. I don't remember exactly. I think it's used within here. I think it's this. Yeah, here. Because this was broken, so I just replaced it with that offset zone map, and it fixed it, which was awesome. It launches jailbreak D as a daemon, and launches injector and injects this payload that hooks launchd and XPC proxy into launchd, which is process ID 1. That's basically all it does. So Vortex is like the complicated bit. Vortex is like the kernel heap feng shui bit that's like way over my head and takes years of learning to understand how to do. But there's a code up online to look at. It will be when it's done, but I'm keeping Meridian closed source just for now, so I don't have like a million different people releasing like what do I call it? Unofficial builds, like that X-Preeks guy that released that unofficial build for Goblin. and it has ended up causing Stixtron a massive headache because he now has a bunch of users with a bunch of random issues that he doesn't really know how they were caused and how to fix, and he now has to deal with that. So I know it's kind of bad because people obviously would like to look at it, but it will be up there. It will be up there. It's already on GitHub already. I can show you the repo. I've got like a bunch of developers on it too, so you know it's trusted, obviously. So the repo is here, but it's private for now, and I'll make it public when release candidate 0 is released. Comes out. If I show you the settings here, collaborators. Yes, you can see here. Stixtron's on the repo, Fox is on the repo, Cheesecake UFO's in here, NullPixel and Stex29, and Wispy Skies. So it's not like I'm doing anything I should be hiding. Like, you'd know about it if I was hiding something. Why not remove code during kernel panic or post exploitation? We have root access, therefore bypassing. It's like way more complicated than that. It's to do with ARM exception levels. I think they're called exception levels. Basically, there's like different levels of privilege within like an ARM architecture. You've got like the lowest one, which everything happens in, is userland, which like wet apps are and shit. Then there's kernel, which is like a step up, and that's like what we try and exploit to modify the userland. But then obviously if you want to modify kernel heavily, you have to step up again and go to exception level 3, which is where KPP is on older systems, and like KPTR, although I'm not sure if that's like different because not sure if that's different because that's hardware based. I don't really know, but yeah, that's not really possible. You have to sort of find a bypass for KPP or KTRR, which is why Jailbreak is now a thing, because it's not really feasible to constantly find. Well, it's not really feasible to constantly find bypasses for hardware protection. It's a lot more difficult. You can't debug it. You can't. Well, you probably can, but it's obviously more difficult because it's hardware and it's not as closely tied into the system as kernel is. So, and I don't even know if Apple has a bug bounty for it, or if anyone has a bug bounty for it, which means people probably aren't looking for exploits to get past KTRR. The shitty thing is around Apple is that it was pretty much only introduced to actually fuck with us, basically. It doesn't at all stop viruses or malware from infecting your phone and stealing your data or whatever. It literally just fucks with us jailbreak guys, which is really shitty considering we're like a massive minority compared to Apple's huge user base. Like, we're like 0.01% probably of the entire, all the people that use iOS. But you gotta do what you gotta do. That's why Jailbreak is a thing now, and I think it's definitely a good solution. You kind of just have to work within the boundaries of what's allowed. Because in theory they can patch it, but I was talking to NullPixel about this, and like, he was saying it doesn't really make sense to. Like, you already have kernel access, but then again, you know, you already have kernel access, and then they added KTRR, so we can't patch kernel as much. So I don't know. It's kind of depends what Mr. Cook, how much he hates us. Boot ROM exploit would be nice. Yeah, iBoot exploit like exists. I'm sure you could find one if you knew what you were doing. Sagusa. But I don't, that's for sure. I don't know. I'll probably keep this as a hobby. I probably won't even go into a sort of career in this stuff. I'm more looking at like software development, but you know, it's an option. So we'll see. We'll see. As much as I'd love to find like an iBoot exploit or something, or if one existed. Well, one does exist, but not publicly. That'd be awesome. Only a few have ever existed. There hasn't been a one in a long time. Not since the 4, iPhone 4, A4 chips, I think. Can Vortex be modified to run? Vortex is a kernel exploit. Vortex isn't to do with jailbreaking. You would need Vortex to jailbreak, but you would need a lot more work than a kernel exploit. Well, not. That's not what I mean. You need a lot of things to go with Vortex to get jailboot working. To have a jailboot. A4 on the iPhone 4, yeah. That was with Lime Rain and Shatter, I think. 3:06 AM, here sleepy but keeping up. I'm probably going to get off in a minute, to be honest. I've been streaming for almost 3 hours. 2 hours 40 minutes. It's kind of, I don't really have an agenda. I just had this like list of things that need fixing, and we managed to get through a few of them, so it's good. Yeah, and we found out that like this isn't what I thought it was, and yeah, so we're getting closer to this, which is like exciting stuff. This is tweak injection. This is like, yeah, we have tweaks now, but we have to fix this stuff first. Although I guess this can go here. Yeah, I'll get that sorted at some point. I actually have a week off in a couple of weeks, so I think I have tomorrow and then another week. And tomorrow, Friday, might even be inset day, so that'll be awesome. I'll have a lot of time to work on it. What about figuring out what Vortex Injector is doing? So, people that have used Vortex Injector before are having like this issue where even if they try and reinstall Cydia through the Meridian app, it won't actually work. Cydia crashes their entire device, causes a kernel panic when they launch it. And I have no fucking idea what's causing that, or how you could possibly fuck up a tool so badly that it does that. But I believe it's linked with Vortex Injector, because people that have used Vortex Injector are having that issue. So I'm gonna have to dig through the fucking awful code for it and figure out what it's doing and how to undo it. Best of luck. Well, your PB6 is working well. iPhone 17.3.3. Please include that thing that breaks ETA update. Use the tvOS profile. Either that or manually edit your host file. I don't want to include that with Meridian because I know it causes issues with OTA. Well, not OTA updates, but updates for like watchOS and downloading App Store apps again, and AirPods firmware, I imagine. Here, I'll link you the open that link on your device and install it. That will stop updates from coming through. Or you can manually edit your host file if you want, but I don't want to break things for people without necessarily wanting it, so. But that profile works well. One interesting thing I was actually reading through about the Shatter Lime Rain exploit. Not Lime Rain. The Shatter iBoot exploit is, if I can find it, here, I think. Prosix Ninja did this presentation on boot ROM and the Shatter exploit, and it basically goes through like how it works and how iBoot works. So this is like the memory map for iBoot. So it goes through all the different parts of iBoot and like how this exploit works and how like exploiting iBoot's difficult because it's really low level. You don't have much debugging access, well, if any. There's not much to it, so there's not many, not much space for exploits, not much code for exploits to happen. You know, not enough code for many mistakes to be present. That's the boot ROM. Oh yeah. I think there's another picture of boot ROM itself when he talks about the payload in here. Is it here? Is it here? Is it here? It's in here somewhere. Is it this? I think it's this part of it. This was really interesting though. It's quite long, but it's like kind of amazing how they find these really obscure exploits in such a little amount of code. They basically like loaded up this payload over USB, which kind of overwrote this section past what you were meant to write, because you could like specify, I think, a smaller size of payload than you actually had, and then like by overwriting it multiple times, you kind of put in very specific amount of data to overwrite this data outside of this area here. Yes, you can see here. It's really cool. It's like, it'd be crazy if someone could find another exploit, iBoot exploit. One exists, but it's private. You can make a lot of money off the private one, I'd imagine. I was thinking like, it's probably not worth it. You probably wouldn't make enough out of it, but you could theoretically have a service where someone mails in their iDevice, and for like $150 you can downgrade it to like any version that it supports, because that's one of the things you can achieve with an iBoot exploit, which is like super cool. Obviously it's sort of like you can do a lot of stuff with an iBoot exploit, but that's just one of the ideas I had. It'd be nice if Apple just unlocks the boot ROM for us and was just like, yeah, you're nuts. KPP check every 12 seconds. Can you assume that you can modify kernel between that period? KPP checks anywhere between minimum time and like 3 hours. So you can patch kernel temporarily on devices that have KPP, but those patches will just crash your device when KPP checks. And the idea of KPP isn't stop you randomly. Basically, in text is code, and that's so KPP protects the code. And so when you apply kernel patches, you want to patch code, you want to change code, but you want those changes to be permanent. So if you can only have those changes for a matter of minutes or hours before your device crashes, they're pointless. There's not really many instances where you'd need to like patch one function for like 2 seconds and then unpatch it again. So like in theory, whilst you could do that, it's like not really necessary at all. And then obviously with KTRR is hardware based, and it's instant. Like there's no delay at all. It doesn't mess about. You write to the wrong part of memory and it'll kill your device within like milliseconds. It's kind of irritating to think that like they went through the whole process of designing and adding this entire new hardware chip just to combat like these few thousand people that want to modify their devices. And then also great that we managed to circumvent it multiple times as well. It would be nice if Apple really reconsidered their stance on jailbreaking. Obviously like within reason, but something like a developer firmware or like unsigned developer firmware images which have some sort of restrictions, but hey, KPP is already a big move into jailbreakers, how can we make it worse? That must have been exactly what went through their mind. They were like, this isn't fucking the jailbreakers hard enough, we need something more. We should spend millions of dollars, which is more than this jailbreaking industry is even worth in the first place, because fuck you. Spend millions of dollars designing this hardware chip and then mass manufacturing it and putting it in every single device that we ever manufacture now. iPhone Developer Edition, right? So not rather than developer editions, but say you have one of those $100 developer accounts, you would get access to be able to downgrade your devices to any firmware you want, any unsigned firmware. With the idea being that if you want to test your apps or whatever you're making on older versions, you wouldn't need to go out and buy phones that haven't been updated, because that's just a pain. So you're not only supporting like more older versions of iOS, you're also saving the developers a lot of money, and that's increasing like the support and longevity that older devices have. So like apps get updated and older phones become useless even if they're still running well. But having something which allows developers to downgrade devices would theoretically increase the amount of apps which support these old versions. Like theoretically, I don't know if it actually would. Developers probably decided that they probably will anyway. But so you buy this $100 license and then you just downgrade your device to like a unsigned firmware. And I was thinking if they wanted to be pedantic about it, they could even impose like restrictions on these devices. So like app developers can easily see if you're running a development firmware and decide not to let you use it, maybe, or you can't use certain Apple services, or you can't use versions where exploits exist. Like 8.1.2, you wouldn't be able to use that because the jailbreak already exists. But I don't know. Not exploits in terms of kernel exploits or jailbreaks, but exploits in terms of like security flaws, like Spectre or whatever, you know. Slightly more expensive versions. Yeah, I mean I don't really know much about Android, but like they could do exactly that. Not necessarily a separate iPhone line altogether, but sort of a you spend $100 on. Yeah, Spectre's a bad example. That wasn't really a thing I was thinking of. Something similar to Spectre, but only affects like certain versions, like maybe WebKit exploits or whatever. Stuff that's potentially actually dangerous to people. Not necessarily an entire separate iPhone line, but just sort of, you know, you pay us $100 a year, or however much their development license costs. I think it's like 80 quid. And then, yeah, you give us your money, and then we'll let you jailbreak your phone. Or it's like, yeah, this developer firmware, you just have full kernel access. Like, go nuts. Like, it's like a special unlocked mode. Even if it costs money, like, I'd definitely pay for that. $100 a year is like nothing. I mean, it might be for a lot of people, but to me, that's totally worth it. I'm sure they make a lot of money off that. Yeah, developer phones would totally make sense. Maybe not from Apple's perspective, because they like to keep their sort of phone lines like a lot cleaner. Not necessarily cleaner, but sell a lot less products than manufacturers like Samsung, who have like hundreds of lines of phones. But just letting you load up special versions of firmware, like, yeah, unlocked firmware. So that keeps, you know, the 99.9% of users secure, while having the 0.01% insecure. Temporarily patching the kernel can't lead to a boot loop. To a boot loop, you have to break something, like fuck up signing on launch D or something. The actual, so it can't run. That'll boot loop you. But temporarily patching kernel won't boot loop you. It will just restart your device. It will kernel panic your device. Yeah, I'll tweet out when I fix the vortex injector problem. And patching kernel also will lead to insta panics when I send the bug. Temporarily patching it causes instability because it can do it on KPP. But yeah, a KPP bypass already exists, and as far as I know, it still works on iOS 11. Just no one's had to try it yet. So KPP isn't really like a question anymore. Obviously it's unstable, but you give some, you take some. Hopefully KPP this is like as stable as I hope it'll be, because that would be really great. We've kind of been in this like era where jailbreaks are kind of unstable and a bit of a pain in the ass to use. But having something which never crashes, the only thing you have to do is re-sign it once a week. Loads better. Physically removing KTR. Physically removing. I don't know if it's a separate chip. I think it's built into the SoC. So, good luck. I'd imagine it is anyway, because it has to directly read memory. So this log is picking up my iPad over the network. Yeah, that happens. I've had that happen with another device before. It kind of confused me at first, but what I would be interested in is hardware-based jailbreaks. But I don't really know much about the hardware on a low level. Like, I can repair a phone all day, but I couldn't even point out which chip is which one's the Bluetooth, which one's the Wi-Fi. So maybe there's some, like, you know, you unsolder some resistor or something and it like disables protection or whatever. Enables some hidden developer mode within boot ROM. I wonder if they'll have a public release iboot source code, because they've released Kernel, so maybe they'll take it a step further.
I don't know what's happening in there. Your vital signs are becoming erratic. Your heart rate is beginning to slow. I'm going to give you a shot of something. Just a small shot.
How long are we? 3 hours. Oh man.
You do not have to worry. It's only adrenaline.
Right, what time is it? 20 past 10. Could make some KTR control registers read only. Control registers. Huh. You still have to like fucking modify your SoC though. Like, but that's an interesting idea. You're welcome. No worries, dude. How many viewers do we still have? 33. Oh man. What could go wrong? Only killing an iPhone 7, you know, no big deal. That's only like, what, 600 quid down the drain. Three hours. Alright, I'm probably going to head off for the night. Maybe I'll stream again tomorrow. Maybe I'll stream again this weekend. Depends what I get out to. But, thanks everyone for joining me tonight. It's actually been really good. Really enjoyed it. So, we'll definitely do it again. I hope everyone's learnt something tonight. Oh, it feels like I haven't stopped talking for like 3 hours straight. Anyway, thanks everyone for joining me. I will see you around soon. I'll stay in the chat for a bit after we finish here. But I'll upload the VOD onto YouTube so you can share it with anyone if they haven't seen it. And yeah, you're welcome, Ellie. No problem. I'm glad you've learnt something today. See ya.